Hey guys, it's Libby, and this is my April wrap-up and May TBR. This month I read 2 novels, listened to 3 audiobooks, read 1 collection of short stories, and 2 comic issues of a comic. I don't know how to comic. The first thing I read, I don't think that I talked about in my last wrap-up, but I read it like on the last day of March, so maybe I did, for which I apologize. It was the audiobook of The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. I DNF'd it about 15% of the way through. It's about a guy who, though he is still like in his 30s, has managed to become a grumpy old man because, you know, his wife died, fair enough. But now he is totally unpleasant and runs a bookstore, and I didn't want to hang out around him. Didn't like that. Also, it was a contemporary. I never read contemporaries. What was I thinking? Then I finished the audiobook of Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams. That's book 3 in the Hitchhikers Guide to the Galaxy series. I didn't like this one. And since like I didn't like the beginning, that sort of made me not want to pay attention to it. So like I lost my place in the audiobook a couple of times, and I listened to things twice or out of order, or I probably skipped something. And also I was doing other stuff while I was listening to it, so I didn't really give this one a fair shake, but probably my least favorite of the Hitchhikers series. I think you might like it more if you are British or really into cricket, because there is extended commentary on a cricket game, but I just found everything boring and nonsensical, and this is where it stopped being a science fiction novel, or a science fiction series, and became a fantasy series. We've been sort of getting deeper into the science fiction with the first book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, pretty much just including spaceships and aliens. And then the second book, we are introduced to time travel. And then the third book, we are introduced to reincarnation, which, hate to break it to you, is not a thing. And one of the characters in this book, Agrajag, has been reincarnated hundreds of times, and although I thought his interactions with Arthur, who he believes to be constantly killing him, was like the best part of the book, the best sort of conversation and interaction that happens, I was not able to suspend my disbelief. And then, with a heart full of trepidation, I began So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, the 4th book in the series, which surprised me. Barely anything science fiction-y happens in it. There's a couple of cutscenes, as it were, to Ford Prefect in a spaceship doing spaceship things, but most of it is a love story. Arthur comes back to Earth after all of his crazy travels, and then meets a girl that he likes and tries to date her with complications because he is an awkward British man. So if I hadn't enjoyed this as much as I did, I probably would not have gone on to Mostly Harmless, which I'm currently listening to, but this was great. And I am liking Mostly Harmless so far, so I gave So Long and Thanks for All the Fish 4 out of 5 stars. And also, there is no audiobook of this, so I just read the short story Young Zaphod Plays It Safe, which comes before books 4 and 5. I'm now almost done with Mostly Harmless, and the events of Young Zaphod Plays It Safe have not resulted in anything in that, so I kind of think it was a waste of time. If you really like Zaphod, maybe read it, but I'm not that into Zaphod. Give that one a 3. Then I read more stuff that disappointed me. Issues 9 and 10 of Lumberjanes by Noelle Stevenson and a bunch of other people. I really liked the beginning of this series. I loved all of the first volume, and most of the second volume was good. It was losing me a little bit at the end there with the random Greek gods. But we kind of brought that storyline to a close, and I thought, okay, we'll get back to the like friendship is magic adventure-y type stuff. And then I am not experienced in the ways of comics, so like I knew that this was kind of a thing, but I didn't think it would happen to me, and that is that issue number 9 does not have the regular illustrator. It is illustrated by a different person, actually a series of different people, because this is basically a filler issue where the girls and their counselor sit around and tell spooky stories around a campfire. And so each of their stories is illustrated by a different artist, which I thought was interesting, but it only works if you have the usual artist doing the art for all of the narrative bits, all of the parts where you actually see our characters. And we didn't. And that was not good. And then issue number 10 was just super dull, and now I've given up on that series. Gave them both 2 out of 5. I'm getting the impression that comics are just not working for me. They have a different sort of time scale that they're telling their story on, and it's too slow for me. Then I read 2 books for the BookTube SFB Awards. The first one was Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This was pretty good. I gave it a 3 out of 5, and you can see more of my thoughts about it in my Final Thoughts BookTube SFF Babbles video. I also read Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I read this all in one day during the Dewey's 24-hour readathon, and I really liked it. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I thought maybe I should do a review on it, but then I realized that I don't have much to say. I liked all of it, all of the things. That thing, I like that. The other thing, yeah, that was good. Everything in this was very good. I recommend it. It's about a high schooler on an alien planet in the future who is trying to break up with her boyfriend. But then the planet is attacked by an evil corporation, and now they might have to work together to save everyone's lives, and it's super awkward. Ugh. And as I'm sure you know, it is not told in regular narration. It's told in emails and chats and AI contents. I don't computer. And actually, I realized how close to being done I was with the Bloody Chamber, so I just paused the video for a sec and finished this. This is a collection of short stories by Angela Carter, and boy, do I have some thoughts about it. This is a gothic-y collection of fairy tale retellings. The stories were not intended to all be put into a book together. They were published separately, and you can kind of tell because there's 2 Beauty and the Beast retellings and 2 Little Red Riding Hood retellings. It's also kind of maybe edging into the erotica genre. All but one, I believe, of the stories had a lot of stuff about sex, or if not sex, then at least the physicality of the human body, or sometimes the not human body. And not a small amount of it kind of grossed me out. So let's just go through the stories one by one. I did read these out of order, but I will tell you about them in the order that they appear in. The first one is the longest one. It's called The Bloody Chamber, and it is a Bluebeard retelling. It's set in the 19-teens, I think, in France. It's quite different than all the other ones. It's narrated in the first person. All of the other ones, I think, except for Puss in Boots, are in the third person. And it's your standard Bluebeard situation where the young, inexperienced ingenue marries a rich guy with a remote castle. She moves in there, and well, I don't know what happens after that because I stopped reading it. This story was super gross. Our main character is 17. Her husband is much older, and he's very skeevy. And at a certain point, I was just ew. I don't want this anymore. And the funny thing is that people on the back and in general on Goodreads and stuff have described this short story collection as feminist. I did not feel empowered by this. I felt creeped on. The second story is The Courtship of Mr. Lion. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it's not actually a retelling. It's just exactly the same story as Beauty and the Beast if you've read the original. If you haven't read the original, the French fairy tale from the 17th century, 18th century? 17th century. Then you might enjoy this, but I was just yep. That's what happens. It is set in London in the 1920s instead of France in the 17th century, but whatever. It got a 2.5. The next one was The Tiger's Bride, which is also a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it was actually my favorite in the entire collection. It's the only one that I can actually say that I liked. And that is because I am a total sucker for Beauty and the Beast retellings with a twist ending, where one of them dies, or both of them dies, or a Shrek situation happens, or it turns out they don't actually like each other. I love that stuff. And the only one I'd read before was The Queen of Atlantis by Sarah Rees Brennan, which is a short story you can find online and you should read it. But this one also had a twist ending, so I quite enjoyed it. Next came Puss in Boots, which is a retelling of Puss in Boots. I'm actually really not familiar with the original story, so I can't compare Angela Carter's version of it to that. But yeah, I was bored. Whatever. Then came The Errol King, which was like acceptable. I might put it in the good category as opposed to the bad category, along with The Tiger's Bride. I thought that it might be the same story that's told in Goethe's poem, which was set to music by Schubert, called Errol König. If you haven't listened to it, you should learn German and go listen to it, because that song is amazing. It's not the same story as appears in this collection, but the Errol King is the same dude. He's like a Germanic, mysterious forest man, probably with magic, and he kills people seductively. This story was very dreamscapey. It was kind of hard to figure out exactly what was going on or follow a precise plot, but there were some very nice turns of phrase. So, 3 stars. Then after that, oh my god, smack in the face, The Snow Child. This, normally when I suggest that people not read a book, it is because there are lots of good books in the world, and I think you're wasting your time reading a bad book. I think your life would be better if you spent that time reading a good book. In this case, and this is one of the only ones I can think of, the issue is not that you are wasting your time when you could be doing something better. The issue is that this story is bad and don't read it. It's only 1 page long. It still managed to be so offensive. Let me just say, it's not that no one is ever allowed to have sex with a dead child be part of their story, but if it is going to be part of your story, there needs to be a good reason, and you need to handle it sensitively. This did neither. What the fuck? 1 star if I could give 0, then 0 if I could bleach my brain, I would do so. Next is The Lady of the House of Love, which I do not think is a direct retelling, but it's sort of drawing on a bunch of vampire mythology. This is where Gothic fiction gets a bad name. It was pulpy and silly, and I did not like it. Next one is The Werewolf, which I thought was okay, like a 2.5. It is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. If you are super into like werewolf folklore, you might enjoy this, but it wasn't really for me. Then we have In the Company of Wolves, which isn't really telling one specific story. There's sort of 3 incidents that Carter describes, and they sort of flow into one another. Again, if you like werewolf folklore, maybe look into it, but nothing special. And the last one is Wolf Alice. I'm not sure if this is based on an original, but it kind of felt like that. So if it's not based on an original, then congratulations for creating that sort of vibe. I might have liked this if I had not already read The Tiger's Bride, but this was kind of samey and had a worse ending. So this collection as a whole, I'm rating 2 stars. You don't need to buy it. I mean, I liked The Tiger's Bride, but it wasn't the most brilliant and amazing thing that I've ever read, and I would happily have not read that if it means that I hadn't read The Snow Child or The Bloody Chamber. Okay, now that that diatribe is over, currently reading. I'm in the middle of 2 audiobooks right now. One of them is Mostly Harmless, the last book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, and I'm super close to finishing, so hooray. I'm also listening to the audiobook of Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier. I may switch over to the physical copy if I am in a situation where I need to have my ears open but don't need my eyes focused. This is about a wife and mother who feels constrained by society, so she goes and falls in love with a pirate and has romantic adventures in Cornwall in the 17th century. It's not my favorite Daphne du Maurier. It's a little bit pulpy. It's fairly pulpy. Daphne, I see where she got her reputation for being pulpy from. However, Rebecca and My Cousin Rachel are still brilliant, and you are not allowed to say a word against them. I'm pretty much exactly halfway through. And I'm also working on the 5th season. I'm currently on page 85. I talked about this in my final thoughts on the BookTube SFB Awards, and I'm having some issues with this, mainly with the second person narration that about half the book is written in. I am enjoying the geology, because of course I like geology, and I just got through the first cyanite chapter, and that sure grabbed my attention. I would not have guessed how that chapter was going to end up, so maybe you've hooked me, N.K. Jemisin. Also, Jane from Yes Miss Jane said that this has an amazing ending and I need to just power through the second person in order to get there. Okay. And then for my TBR next month, we have all of the books that I have scheduled to read to meet my challenges of finish the Discworld series, read 5 Daphne du Maurier's, and 5 historical fiction novels set before the year 1800. I was totally thrown off of this goal by the BookTube SFB Awards and reading The Crimson Petal and the White, which took me basically all of February, but Frenchman's Creek counts for 2! It's by Daphne du Maurier and it's set before 1800, and I'm halfway done, so hooray! The other books on the docket I'm just gonna read because I don't have time to take them all off of the shelf and then put them back on, especially if I'm gonna have to make time to read all of this. A bunch of Pratchett's. I have Carpe Jugulum, The Wee Free Men, A Hatful of Sky, Wintersmith, I Shall Wear Midnight, The Shepherd's Crown, which I believe is now out in paperback, Pyramids, Small Gods, Mort, Reaper Man, and Soul Music. And then also The Fair Fight by Anna Freeman, The House on the Strand by Daphne du Maurier. Oh, I forgot The Amazing Morris and His The Amazing Morris and His Educated Rodents by Terry Pratchett as well. And The White Queen by Philippa Gregory. So once I get through the 5th season, I'm going to be charging headlong through all of that. I can read most Pratchett's in 2 days, so I actually have a chance. And House on the Strand is not particularly long either. The only pitfall that I foresee is that 2 books on my shelf have been calling my name. One of them is The Gargoyle by Andrew Davidson, which I hauled back in winter. Oh man, I just want to know what craziness is within these pages. I really want to know. Also, my collection of Catherine M. Valente novels is growing, but the number of books I've read by her is still 0. And I'm kind of feeling the deathless. Read me, Libby. Don't you want to know? I do want to know. So there we go. That's what I read and what I'm going to read. I hope that you guys had a lovely April, and Lord, lead me not into temptation.